Okay, so we're going to try something different tonight. This is actually kind of a test to see if I can eventually move this to Twitch. I've been really kind of, hesitant to go live completely just because there's a lot of things that I wanted to work out before I started going live and making sure that I had a decent layout and everything else like that, and try and figure out what the placement would be and whether or not my system, the microphone, all that sort of thing would work out just fine. So what I'm working on right now is this is going to be a layout. My buddy Ben from Brass Engine, he has been getting me to do some work for him where he's creating these really kick-ass designs that are based on different IPs and concepts for a series of products. And one of the things that we had started talking about, that he had reached out to me about, was ones based on moments from Lord of the Rings and characters and things like that. We're talking about something with Shelob. So what I'm thinking here is that I'm going to try and do something where I'm going to do the layout first and see how this goes and see if this turns into what I want it to be. It's square because the coasters, and that's actually what this is going to be on, are going to be worked out this way. So one of the things I was thinking was, this is going to be for really rough placement, so I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer here. And this is really kind of the first time I'm going through and talking through a lot of this stuff. So I will hopefully be adding some music. I almost said noise. Some music to this. It's actually kind of crazy because I had to lock the cats out of the studio. Normally about this time of night, it's about 10 o'clock. I'm having to fight one of them for this particular chair, which is the most comfortable chair in the studio. And they're also trying, especially Luna, you've seen her in other videos more than likely if you've been watching other videos that I do. She'll sometimes, like especially the vlogs, she'll walk right across the camera zone. And anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So I know that basically I want, Shelob to have sort of a looming presence. So, kind of dealing with the overall anatomy of, Shelob and Ungulent. I believe that's right. I start working on this stuff so late at night that I get really tired. I don't even think what I'm really, like sometimes my pop culture deflates a little bit in the evening, and that's sort of shameful to admit. I wanted to do something maybe where, you could kind of see the legs almost over encroaching over and coming down, like something along this line. And right now I'm just trying to sketch in to get a basic feel for how Shelob would be coming after them. Now, for those of you that have followed me in other videos, you know that I'm a bit of an arachnophobe, but I'm also extremely fascinated by them. And in my playthrough, I've had a couple of really kind of creepy run-ins while playing the game Limbo with a spider who had the constitution of a vending machine. So if that's the case, then maybe... So if I'm remembering the books right, Frodo would maybe be down here, sort of wrapped up like this. A little tiny figure down here. And Sam could be right about here, maybe something along that line. And maybe he's got, so the face for her would be up here, and then maybe looking down this way. So maybe Sam is standing here sort of along this line. And the crazy part is that like a lot of this is going to get mired in shadow. This is going to be something that I'll end up drawing here initially in Photoshop, and then switching over into Illustrator and redesigning a lot of this. Right now what I'm trying to do is ascertain, because in the book, if I remember this right, he held up the gift from, my god, Galadriel. I think it was Galadriel's light that he held up. And I know this is coming to me some other way. I think I've seen so much of this sort of thing, where he's holding that up and there's going to be this glare. And so maybe he's looking up. that way. And we've got him kind of in here, stocky. And I think at this time, I don't recall. See, this is so weird. Like any other circumstance when I'm not trying to do like 3 things at the same time, which is record and talk, and also draw through this. One would think that, you know, I'd be able to get, you know, my facts straight on this sort of thing. I believe he did have Sting at this point in time. He had managed to get it and was using it to hold Shelob off. But I know Galadriel's light had something to do. It blinded the spider, I believe. And man, I really got to go back and either reread the books or spend some time with my audiobook selections and get that sort of thing going. So if he's going to be there, then maybe the rocks, and there's going to be some shadow there with Frodo underneath that. Maybe the rocks back here are all in shadow. I'll just quickly draw this in. Just trying to block in some shapes. So then I am, you know, in the mythology, I am fascinated by the creatures that Shelob and Ungolin are, because when I was young, I assumed they were monstrous spiders, like mutated spiders, because they had a stinger. And, you know, that there's nothing worse that really kind of haunts my head than a spider with a stinger sort of thing. That's just, oh man, I talk about nightmare fuel a lot. There's a lot of things I'm freaked out about. You know, the animal kingdom is definitely a bizarre thing. So in this case here, with what I'm drawing, I'm trying to look for shapes and things. This is just real rough. So since the light is reflecting, maybe part of the leg is in shadow here. There's definitely going to be this here. So the light comes up, starts to do this sort of thing. I'm actually rather excited about this because I rarely get a chance to really work through the concepts like this. I've always done sort of speed drawing and that sort of thing. But like, and even with this, like this is a little static, but this is the reason why you kind of go through it. I don't work with small thumbnails in the same way that other people do. And you know, when I'm doing this sort of thing, it's more because I'm wanting to get some kind of idea as to how dynamic I want to try and make this. I definitely like where this is going, because, you know, but this is a very rough, simple concept at this point. And, you know, doing more research into this, like, you know, since this is so simple, and what I can do here is go ahead and add in a new layer. Let me go ahead and save this. Okay, that's saved now. And let me get in here. All right, so I've created another layer. So what I end up doing in here is picking a slightly different color. Traditionally, I work with reds and light blues, mainly because then I can start to build upon this bottom level down here and really start to, you know, figure out like what the actual shapes are of everything and how exactly I'm going to fill this in, you know. Now, the reason I'm not going straight on with doing a full-on, you know, color in with black ink or anything else like that is because I've never really found, whenever I take it from Photoshop, even this is a 300 DPI document at 8 by 8 inches. I don't even know what the pixel size is on this, but what I'll end up doing is going back in Illustrator and then creating a fresh vector over that. That takes quite a bit longer to execute, but in this case, I'm just trying to give myself some idea as to where the black outlines will be on this thing, so I'll know exactly, you know, where to fill in on certain other elements. And it seems like it's kind of a backwards way to work, but it's one of the few ways I've, like, digitally I end up looking at what I can create, you know, quickly to get a look or a feel in there for the inking and still be able to leave the lighter areas down here like so. The house is like really humid and dry at the same time. It's a weird thing. And also, ever since I started working at the museum, like I've had some hellacious allergies picking up and things like that. Sometimes when you go back into some of the areas like art storage and stuff, even as clean as they keep it, you end up in these circumstances where, it's just, it's older art, so it stores funny, and even under the best of circumstances, you end up like, at least I do, I end up with a lot of allergies and stuff like that. It's just a little overwhelming to the senses. So I kind of I don't want to block the face, because basically the shape is going to be in shadow, and then I thought, okay, well, maybe the eyes would be showing up. And the thing is, this is going to be done using a Glowforge, so I have to remember that I can go fairly detailed with this, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I mean, it's well within the capacity of that machine to be able to do some fairly complex stuff. But I have to keep reminding myself that what I'm trying to do here is simply get the overall general shape of this thing down, and then try and work with it that way. So that way I don't have... And what I'm saying is, as I'm repeating myself multiple times, I'm just trying to basically get a very general direction that I'm going to be going in. You'll notice how I'm leaving a little extra white in there, just kind of as some guidelines and some breakup for the space on there. And then even down here where the abdomen is. If I was doing this traditionally, I'd probably be going a little bit more nuts with this and trying to get a little bit more detail to pop up and come out of that. And even then, there's some things I have to correct, like, well, where does this leg actually go? Or is it just falling into shadow here? That sort of thing. And this is already starting to come together really well as far as a basic idea. And spiders do have hairs on them, so I try and remember that sort of thing. Like, I mean, that isn't anything that I'm going to necessarily put into the vector, but it's something that I remember seeing some macro photography of them, and this is so strange, because as I've said before, I am an arachnophobe. Trying to get past that, trying to accept spiders for what they are. I found one the other day down here in the studio, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, there you are, and here I am, and what are we going to do about that? And I am rather proud to say that I managed to get him out. I say him, I don't know what it was, female, and managed to get the little spider out. And I normally I'd have went and found a broom and crushed it, and that is something I'm highly shameful about. I know there's plenty of people that love sharing the meme about burning down the house or whatever when it comes to a spider, but no, I reserve that sort of hellacious treatment for roaches. Not gonna do that. All right, so now that I've got this kind of laid out here, I'm gonna go back in here and sort of redefine. All right, so the shine would be coming off here, something like that. And I'm not gonna have this sort of cartoony sort of flashing thing in there, but I will come in here, and then maybe there's the arm coming down this way. This is the vial here, and then so this is where things can get a little dodgy for me sometimes, because I want to be able to start formulating what the overall shape of this is, and I keep forgetting working digitally, so I can zoom in on this. So let me see here. Oh, we're not doing too bad. It's about 15 minutes in. Hopefully this is not boring you guys to tears. So again, this is something where I'm trying to simply get a little bit of detail in here, because this is going to reduce quite a bit. So there's a part of me that's like, all right, I'm drawing this in here, but try and remember that there's a lot of areas that are light, that because the light source is coming back this way, it would light up around the vial in the hand and create a shadowed sort of element, but that the majority of the body and the face and the hair would be within shadow. And they have their little half pants and that sort of thing going on. I have always found Hobbit pants to be hilarious. So put this in here. Of course, Samwise Gamgee had a backpack, so we'll put that in there. Put that like this way. And then, since he's holding Sting here, we'll do that. There's going to be a little bit of light, of course, coming off Sting. I think, anyway, I don't remember if Sting lit up whenever they had to fight Shelob. I want to say that's the case. I could be thinking of the old Rankin Bass cartoon. And so there's that to contend with. So again, a lot of this is simply just I would do keyboard shortcuts somewhere. My buddy Ryan Johnson is totally hating on me for this, but the reason being is the way this desk is designed to sit real close to the Cintiq. I have my keyboard. It slides up underneath here, and I have a couple of different control inputs. But when I'm doing this, it's just faster and better for me. It's a mainstay in my head to be able to go up to File and Save. I cannot tell you the number of times I've been in the middle of drawing and had something go completely bad. And had I just been using the keyboard shortcuts, I would have remembered to have saved. So here's Mr. Frodo on the ground, and he is all wrapped up. For any of you that have been to the Nelson, if you go into the Egyptian area, there is that very wrapped up mummy there that they have. And I can say one interesting side effect of having gotten a job there and, you know, we're wandering around at night and, you know, taking in the artwork and stuff like that, you end up seeing a lot of, you know, stuff over and over again. And I've taken my time, like, it's weird because, like, sometimes at 2 in the morning, the last thing, or 1 in the morning or whatever, most sane people are not going to walk over and look at a dehydrated body and study it or look at it. But a lot of it was, I've been fascinated by how they're wrapped and the incredible way and work that they did on them to preserve the bodies. And there's times whenever I think to myself, like, this is a dead body here right next to me. This is somebody who's, you know, been completely wrapped up. And it is a little bit of an unnerving feeling at first, because you're thinking to yourself, like, or at least I'm thinking, man, this person, you know, died, and his or her interior has been, you know, taken out via canopic jar, and I don't remember if those are in the collection there or not. It's terrible, right? Like, but I'm a security guard, not a guide in that respect. I should know my stuff better. I should absolutely know my stuff better. But I use the argument that even when I used to go there all the time, I wasn't always paying attention to every little detail like I have to now, and I'm beginning to learn that place better and better all the time, and that sort of thing. So okay, so we know that this is going to be where the shadowing is, and we know it's going to come back here like this. So let's pull this all into view here. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. All right, so that's looking not too bad. So the next step is going to be going in and taking this, and what I'm wanting to do is basically I'm gonna come around in this area like this and fill in a lot of these areas with, you know, more. This would almost be completely solid, and it will be solid in the actual vector art that is going to come down from this. And most of this was to create kind of an outlined sort of feel behind it, you know, like a very cavernous sort of feel. Let me enlarge the brush there a little bit, and to give it a little bit more movement and that sort of thing. And I want to say, I cannot remember, there's an Illustrator that comes to mind that this is sort of reminding me of. I remember that, oh God, I think his name is Chris something or other, illustrator from quite a while back. And whenever he would do Lord of the Rings sort of stuff, this is what it reminded me of. And I thought, well, I can, you know, without looking at his work, I can kind of remember what some of this was like, and, you know, maybe pull something from that. Now, this is not a bad start. It's not a great start. You know, it's just a rough. And again, you know, the more I can pull into this, and the more I can create some really nice contrasty shapes from the background and pull this together, the better this is going to come together. But a lot of this is going to get super simplified in the vector. So there we've got a basic idea and a rough outline as to what it's going to look like. And I'm going to take this and really redefine it using the pencil tool in Illustrator to kind of trace back over what I've done here. So I'm going to take this JPEG or this PSD that I'm working in right now. I'm going to flatten it into a JPEG and then bring it over into Illustrator. Okay, now we're here in Illustrator. So the way this is going to work is, as you can see, I've already pasted it in on a layer, and I'm just going to do a new layer. And at this point, you know, I end up, sometimes I'll dim the images, you know, to 50%, and well, that's a new layer, so that's not what I meant to do there. But I can go here, go dim, and it just lightens it up. If for any of you who've not used Illustrator, that's sort of a tip or a trick I'll do whenever I'm doing this sort of thing. Now, again, this was simply a rough. It was just to get the idea down. It was just to start getting some thoughts down on this sort of thing. So I usually give myself some freedom to start going a little bit crazy with this and try some different things. Now, for some reason, and maybe somebody else can answer this, a lot of times whenever I work in Illustrator, I usually try and illustrate, and you know what, it's always weird, especially this time of night. I'm trying to remember where in the world the pencil tool is. There we go. And I know I should know the keyboard shortcut for it, but I don't. And that's funny too, because I've been using Illustrator since like 1996, and I never took the time to learn a lot of these things. So what we're going to do is we're just going to zoom in here, and I think what I'm going to do first is concentrate on the overall shapes of Shelob. So, you know, yes, there's this down here. I always tend to, even when I'm drawing, I'll start up in one corner and run across. It's digital, I get it, I'm not going to mess anything up. But it's still a thing where I like to kind of be, you know, sort of in control. So, you know, of where I'm heading, and it follows the traditional way of drawing that I'll do it. So one of the things I didn't like initially here, after I did the drawing, was I was like, okay, Shelob should be a lot more scary, and this is sort of a fantasy sort of thing, and I don't want to necessarily pull directly from the way, the fairly realistic depiction of it, even in Peter Jackson's, you know, wonderful movie, where, you know, I've always thought these were, like I said, monstrous creatures. So if we're lightening this up here, let's go in, let me go back in here, and let's go ahead and lighten that. I'm going to pull my keyboard out 25%, just so that way the red's not so strong, but it's still high contrast enough. Now I'm going to go back up here to layer 2, and I'm going to start just with some basic shapes for how I picture the leg looking and this sort of thing. It doesn't look like I'm doing a whole heck of a lot right now, but what I'm doing is just creating a very complex vector and coming back in here and doing that sort of thing to it. So this is how most all of my illustrations, even the other ones I will work on for my own personal stuff on Ardor, end up coming out. I don't really use the pen tool a lot because I want to be able to create shapes that are a little bit more organic or just a little bit more off the beaten track. They just have a looser feel to them. And this is something I like to do even when I'm outlining in shadows on my other work. You know, with real pen and ink, I'll do a lot of free flow element like this. The frustrating thing, and I have yet to figure out how to fix this. If you guys know how to fix this, leave a comment down below. But every single time I'll draw a new vector, it snaps back to it being no swatch selected, and that is maddening to me. That's absolutely nuts. I don't understand why it does that sort of thing, because as you'll notice, I have the black swatch selected right now, and I know somebody right now, either from Hallmark or any one of the other places that's watching this that has any creative capacity is probably going, are you stupid? How do you not know this? This was released some time back. You know, this is how you would do this. Now you notice here, after I fill this in, you'll notice I kind of stopped here shy because I'm trying to design the negative space of this, if that makes any sense to you guys. So I'm trying to be careful about how I'm exactly pulling this over simplified element of Shelob together to make the shapes that I want out of it. Zoom out here a little bit. Oh, zoom out. All right, so let's go ahead and turn off this down here. And you'll see how the shapes are starting to come together without the underlying art. And so I'm not exactly going back in and tracing everything. Let's see here. Get this foot here a little more. And again, one of the other things I'm doing is, and I'll probably end up going back in this in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but what I'm also doing is trying to get other elements in here. And this is where things can, I can't really explain this. This is just the way I work. Sometimes I can get ahead of myself where things don't quite work out exactly like I thought they were going to for one reason or another. And I end up sometimes literally painting myself into a corner with things, which is not a great feeling because I'm trying to work within the realm of the stuff that I have here that I have to address as far as overall forms and that sort of thing on this creature. And the challenge can come from suddenly forgetting a shape in my head that I was like, oh yeah, this is how the leg would function or look or that sort of thing. And I end up finding myself a lot of times forgetting where I'm placing something and sometimes this comes second nature to me, where I'm able to work with the negative space and lighting pretty well. And then there's other times when it's just a chaotic mess. But the reason I'm leaving so much white space in here on this is because I know that I'm going to come back in. And if there's anything that I need to connect, I can overlap shapes. I can recreate elements and add small details into this thing. And the reason I'm doing this, the blacks like this, and it very much mimics either like an intaglio process or a woodblock printing sort of thing. Actually, not woodblock printing, because if you're doing woodblock, it's a subtractive, right? So you're subtracting away where the whites will be, and then the darks. Well, okay, so it's kind of an inverted version of this, because in woodblock, for those of you that don't know, it's the raised elements on the linoleum or the wood that are printing on the paper. In this case, the areas that I'm not drawing black into on this vector drawing are going to be the raised areas of the coasters, and then everything else will be burned down to a certain level with the Glowforge. Ben could explain this way better than I could, and I think I've given you guys a very oversimplified take on what this is exactly. And so, like in here, I'm gonna come in and do that little hinge there on the leg and do this sort of thing. So speaking of Peter Jackson's movie, everything, I was watching the brilliant video essay that Lindsay Ellis did on YouTube. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, you really should. If you're any kind of a fan of Lord of the Rings, she does an amazing breakdown of what that film meant for not only New Zealand, but people in general, the fandom and what it was and everything that went wrong. And I'm sorry, I'm talking about The Hobbit at this point, because that was a movie that I think polarized a lot of people. Like a lot, there are people I've met who are dyed in the wool, either, you know, Peter Jackson enthusiasts or fans, and then there's others that are like, oh hell no, you know, what was wrong with that film? What? And I know that, you know, the biggest thing that's come out of all of it is the fact that Guillermo del Toro was was attached to it, you know, way back in the beginning. And that was something I was genuinely looking forward to, was seeing him handle the reins of that. And I would have loved to have seen his fairy tale take on the world. And I think that would have just been freaking brilliant. Okay, so you're seeing here now, just to kind of emphasize what I'm doing, I've overlapped two bits of vectors here. This one and this one. And if we look at let me turn this off so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here. There's what the basic shape is looking like, and probably gonna get this wrong. Oh no, I remembered that keyboard shortcut. That is Control Y to show the vector. So if you look here, this is one shape, this is the other shape, and those are just the Control Y once again. Those are those two shapes overlapped there. Now I know that those are going to conjoin, and I want those to be conjoined, so I'm going to come over here to my shape modes, and I'm going to go ahead and do Unite, which is also Alt-click to create a compound shape and add to the shape area. Basically, I'm just taking two pieces and merging them together in vectors, and therefore reducing. You see the little line went away there? I'll show you one more time. I'll undo. That is Control Z, and I will show you right here, like where these two pieces just merge together. And we're starting to get a really good shape here of Shelob's body. I'm really actually digging this quite a bit. And you notice, compared to the original drawing, where I just had a basic simplification of the legs and stuff, I allowed myself to go back in and get a little more spooky, a little more spiky and pointy. And you're already starting to see where the delegation of the light is. I've chosen that the actual lighting will be down in this area right here and kind of emanating out this way, as you saw with the light of Galadriel. So with that, let's go ahead and turn this back on and get back into this. And so what was I talking about here? I don't remember now, and it's not like this is live so you guys could remind me or anything. So let's go ahead and go in here. Before I start doing all the negative space in here, maybe Shelob has some spikes coming off of her back. So she's got these weird, almost demoniac sort of little things coming off here, and maybe her head is a little more bulbous and swollen out like this. And then because of the light shine, it'll do something along this line, come in a little bit, and then withdraw back this way. Color that in. Okay, yeah, I like that shape quite a bit. Alright, so now let me see here. There's a couple things we can do. I'll probably just hand draw these in because I think they'll look a little bit better. But we can come in here and do an eye right here. Try that one in. Another one over here. Now, Shelob's going to have multiple eyes, being a spider. So we'll do that one, and then we will do another one down here like this one. And then because there's a highlight on it, we'll go back in and we'll either knock out a highlighter, we'll just draw one directly on top. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm not completely sold on the top of the head, but I can always go back like I did over here and maybe add like some other spikes or something like that into this. And I don't have to unify these shapes right now. I can just keep adding onto them and they'll be fine. And one of the other things I do when I'm working on vectors and stuff like that, to make sure that I've got everything in the same layer, I end up going in and making sure that I've got this initial layer 1, locked. If you guys are bored with my instructions, it's probably because you guys are way better at working in Illustrator than I am, and I apologize for that. Alright, so we're going to go in here, and even though I know that that's not going to take anything, we're going to go ahead and do an eye up here. So let's see, maybe we'll do an eye here like this. And then that one will be white. We'll do one like that. White. And maybe there's another one back here, larger. White, and one back here. White. So we're starting to kind of get the shapes I'm wanting in there. Now let's go ahead and go. I just switched to black anyway because I'm going to be trying to do the upper parts of the fangs. Spiders, of course, have, you know, the ability to bite you, and they have little fangs on them. Much more easily seen on larger animals like tarantulas and that sort of thing. This is basically Spider 101, but so what I'm going to do is, since I know the light is coming this way, I'm going to just basically, very basically, kind of draw in the back shadow part of the mandibles. I think I'm talking right on that. I don't know my spider anatomy that well. I don't know all the terminology except for the grand word of thorax. And then every once in a while I just turn it off, and I'm starting to get the look and the shape and feel I'm wanting there. So let's add a little bit of detail in here. So since this is coming off there, there's going to be maybe there's a little bit of shadow on here, like, you know, part of bottom part of the mouth or something like that. And really, honestly, when I draw, I'm thinking of the actual creature in its most basic format. I rarely use reference. That's to a detriment. It's taken me years to get to the point to where I just kind of want to think about what general shapes are and what they're representational of. When I was in college, I was actually fascinated by that. A teacher of mine, George Sample, this was at UCM when it used to be called CMSU. He used to have us do these things where, I'm going to draw while I'm actually telling you guys this. He would have us draw these exercises where we would have the paper covering when we were doing like figure and stuff like that, where it was covering over the areas we were working on. And I was always fascinated by that, because it was almost like having my hand be completely removed from me and seeing a really bizarre thing emerge from underneath. Because what I mean is, I meant to hit save. So what happens is you're drawing, and as you're drawing on this giant pad of newsprint, and you overlay a clean sheet or your previous drawing, and then you're drawing underneath it, and you never take your eyes off the figure in front of you. And I really liked that a lot. There was so much about it that really made me happy, because it was something where it was very freeing. It was just crazy, and it was a hell of a challenge. It really was. All right, so here I'm going to actually make the leg much bigger. Bring this down here like this. Bring this down here. Okay. Going on the hinge there a little bit. Raise that there. Close that up. And drop some ink in there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's looking really good. I'm really liking that quite a bit. Okay, that's really working. Let's see here. Now, I don't want to lose the beautiful stuff that I put up here on top. So I'm going to carefully go back in here. I'm going to conjoin this piece. And I'm just going to kind of dance around in between the horns. Come back up here with another shape. And the reason I'm not that concerned about, following completely through over here, like I'm going to do that right now, but is because I want to make sure that I'm getting the most interesting, sort of motion to it, and I'm going to switch directions here and come back down. I had to go back in and reset the pencil tool to capture that kind of element, and hopefully this is going to translate over really well. Now there's a few little points up here that I'm not really fond of, so I'm going to come in here, and I've set my pencil tool almost too fine, so I'm going to basically, I keep using the word basically, it's like using the word like, and make that a little bit more solid right there, so there's not so many fine points to mess with. The same thing here on this side. And I'm doing this mainly because of the fact that the texture of the particular coasters he's using, they're stone. They're a type of slate, I believe. And it gives me an opportunity to be able to do something that doesn't have to be exact in its detail. In fact, I can show you the other designs I did. The first one I did for him was Gollum. and I really like this one. I broke it down basically. I posed over here and took a photo of myself, kind of crouching down. Now my anatomy is nothing like Gollum, and I didn't feel like chasing down a crackhead anywhere here in Independence to have them pose for this. So I just kept thinking to myself, that there's a little bit of the old Rankin Bass animated version of Gollum in this, mixed in with the motion capture CGI performance of Andy Serkis's Gollum. And I just wanted to break it down. I knew the head was sort of balding. I knew there was hair over to the side, or just wisps of it that would hang down, but really fine details wouldn't show up on there that much. And so then I also took a look back. I was a huge fan of a lot of Timothy Bradstreet's illustrations in Vampire the Masquerade, the old role-playing game. Like, I became obsessed. That, for a long time, my ink style was very similar to that, and it still is to a large degree, as I did in here, where it was like almost like you're taking the spotlight and doing, well, essentially this kind of real shocking, sharp, high contrast lighting. And so that's what I used on this. And then the other one I did was Pellinore Field. This one took me a bit longer, and I think there was a few more things I could have worked in here. But this was the one where I really wanted the White City to showcase as the White City. It didn't make sense to me to have it knocked out in black completely. So I have a small, I collect a lot of different models, but I have a small model of Pellinore Fields. Of the actual White City, I'm sorry, not Pellinore Fields. And that one I ended up really just wanting to see what it was going to look like. So it's a little, it's like a little jewelry box. So it's maybe about, maybe 6-7 inches tall, and I sat it on the table and I took a few photos to see what the angle would be, how far the grand prow here would actually go out, the court on the top, what the basic overall direction and distance of the tower in the back was. And this is very much based on Weta's design. So I just went with that, and I tried to look at how I could break it down in its most simplistic form, and then made a very abstracted mountain in the background. And then in the foreground, I decided to get a little bit more detail oriented, not by much. The orcs, I just basically took some concepts of fantasy and Mongol and other sort of elements, and then like all of the blades, with the exception of probably one in the foreground where I was getting a little exact. I'm like, okay, no orc is going to be carrying a blade that perfect. I just decided to start letting my pen tool or my pencil tool go all over the place and make these erratic, hammered out shapes. And with the Rohirrim, my family has horses, so I'm able to recall what a lot of that is. Now that one, I will say this: it's funny when you don't draw a horse for a while and then you want to go back, or you're trying to draw a horse and the anatomy gets all weird. It suddenly was like third grade art all over again for me. So I did have to go back and look at a few photos and some video just to see how they moved, and then thought to myself, well, how can I break this down into a basic design that would work on this sort of thing here? So I ended up going in, and all the areas that are knocked out, I drew in a basic form, and then I went in and punched out a lot of white areas to make layers of horses in there, like especially this one white one. He wasn't there in the original design, but I had a rider back here that I'd drawn in. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to put a horse there. I thought, I'm going to knock it out backwards. So that way you've got darker and lighter horses on both of them. Both of them in the layout. So back to this here. Let's save that. Okay. So now we're going to start putting more stuff in. We're doing pretty good. It's about 23 minutes in. That's not bad. And so we brought the leg in more here. So what I'm going to do is all of this is going to be lightened up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do maybe another mandible here. I'm going to do the inside of it this time though. And then on this one here, I'm going to do the exterior of the mandible, or the fang, or whatever we want to call it. Okay. And then let's come up here and let's go ahead and start. got really quiet there because for a second I was thinking to myself, I'm like, am I doing that right? And the truth is you know, it's fun to have happy little accidents with this. So take a look at that. Turn this on. Yeah, that's really coming together. Now, of course, I'm leaving the hardest part for the last, which is down here with Sam and Frodo. But let's see what ends up happening here. So I have a basic idea as to where I left this part of the head light so that way I could bring in the general shape here of the leg. Bring it down here. Make it connect with that. And what I mean by connect is I'm looking at the negative space inherently on all of this and how it's going to play through. And so here's an interesting one where I'm like, okay, how far am I pulling this out then? And what I mean by that is this. So I have this shape I've just done here, but this leg here, I don't know that I necessarily want that white highlight. Maybe it does work out. So we're just going to draw this leg in here now. I'm going to separate it from the mandible. And we'll put a little bit of a claw there. Bring it down. Like that. And this one will kind of abruptly stop here. We'll put another little joint fold there. Come back. A lot of this is actually really cathartic in a lot of ways. I know it doesn't seem like it, and some of you might be watching this with a lot of anxiety, but I love how shadows work in real life, and sometimes light refracts in a certain way that doesn't always, you know, play out the way we think it's going to or whatever, and we end up with some crazy looking things when you look at lighting around you. And that's something I try and replicate in this, because I want this to look as graphically strong as I can get it to be. And it's always a challenge when I'm doing this sort of thing, because there's been plenty of times I've messed stuff like this up and not thought about it until halfway through, and then just kind of, you know, digitally inked my way into a corner. That's never fun. All right, so then on this part, let me see here. If I end up adding music into this, I'm hoping it's nothing repetitive, because that'll probably drive you guys crazy. But I'm not going to do anything like techno music or anything else like that. That would be annoying. Okay, so here we're going to do like a little bit of a bulbous sort of thing on the carapace. And then come this way. And what we're doing here is the undershadow that will reinforce the basic shape of the glow of this. And I hope this is going to come out okay. Sometimes I end up doing this and then I hate what I just inked in and I end up having to delete it. Oh, that came out all right. Okay. So right there is the first bit of the glow coming off. Again, keeping it very simple. Trying not to do anything too complex with this, because I know that the real challenge is going to be making this look believable at the same time that it's you know, very stylized. Now I've stopped merging a lot of the shapes just in the event I need to come back and do something with them, but I'm really enjoying how this is looking now. Let me zoom out completely on this here. Yeah, it's actually looking really nice. I'm really happy with that. Let's see this. Oh, my screen is turning slightly yellow. I don't know if you guys can see that or not in the yeah, there it goes. So for an hour. Don't go swimming for an hour. I use this software Flux, and what it does is like it's based on the circadian like response, like it says here, and it's basically software that allows me to control the RGB temperature. Horrible for color correction, but between the blue blocker I have in my glasses and then that software taking over, it allows me to be able to come in and you know, edit out the blue light that is terrible. Even the lamp that's shining on my face right now is a tungsten based bulb, so it's on the warmer bit of the spectrum. And so what I end up doing is trying to keep a basic you know, I basically try and keep as much good for my eyes as I can. I have horrible vision now. It's not great. And it makes me really mad because for years I was getting migraines and all this other stuff. And it would make me really mad that I didn't know enough that my eyes were going bad, not only sight-wise, but they were weakening just in general from a lot of other stuff I was putting them through. And oh man, that was never fun. Okay, so now I'm going to come down here, and what I'm going to do is start to come in off of this leg here. I'm going to create a really smooth form and then jag it out this way to almost kind of make it look like parchment. There's a reason why I'm doing it this way, because I kind of had this idea that maybe the edges on this would be almost like, like almost kind of like a torn, adventure fantasy map sort of thing, since there's really not going to be so much of the lighting in here. And again, I'm not completing this entire shape. I'm going to go back over it to finish it, because of course it would come up here behind Frodo. But I am going to do some of this here, like so, and then finish out that shape and darken it in. Yeah, that's already looking a lot better. All right. So now I'm going to go in and slowly working my way toward the center. I know that Frodo here is going to be wrapped up in some stuff, but I'm going to have a little bit of a challenge here because I'm trying to make him pop out from the background. So there's going to have to be a little bit of shading on this side, but I'm going to focus right now on the spider web sort of wrapping that he was in. And again, keeping it as simple as I can, be a simplistic bit of vector shaping so that it looks right. And I'm going to bleed here into the shadow, overlap here, come down, and maybe the ground here is like rock or something. So there's some details in there, and then come up here, make that black, like so. And then, is that too much? I don't know. We can come in here and slowly do, maybe it's just a small thin line on this side, because I'm trying to strike a balance between what the actual shape is and then what would be lit and what wouldn't be lit up. So we have something akin to that. And then we'll go to... No, that's not what I want. Put all in window. Alright, no, that's actually looking pretty good down there. He's looking a little bit like a silkworm. Kind of crazy. Let me go ahead and close out the other two that I had here. Mr. Gollum and Pellinore Fields. And one of the things that is crazy, and I don't even have all the RAM maxed out in this system. When I had my buddy Matt build this system for me, first of all, B Squared Computers in Knob Noster, Missouri, fucking amazing. If you want a badass gaming system that is unrelenting on what it does, my little machine over here, Digital Absinthe, so kick-ass. I actually was going to have my second camera set up just so you guys could see that and I could do different things with it, but I love it. This was always the dream machine I wanted, knock on wood. It's got a Ryzen 7 processor in it, a ton of storage for video and all this other stuff in there. And yes, this is a shameless plug because he is an amazing dude and just an all-around kick-ass guy, wonderful wife, great kids, all that sort of thing. Come on, what's not to love about that dude? But the best part is, not only is he an uber geek like I am, he's a genuinely kind and very cool person, and he's also one of the hardest working dudes. When it comes to building a machine, he doesn't settle for anything less than what he can ascertain and get to as far as perfect. I think I've only ever had one hiccup, and that was only a hardware malfunction, but it may have been something I did with a DVD drive. Otherwise, the machine's been a dream. And I normally close out a lot of applications and things when I'm working on here because I don't want my system to bog down. But this has never bogged down. It runs games great. It's recording right now via OBS and running Illustrator, and I'm doing live, real-time audio recording. It's doing a great job on all of that. Okay, so getting back down to this. So we're back in here, and there's the shape here where the abdomen is. So now this is where I'm going to be a little bit careful because I really want this shape to come out really well. And I'm going to allow myself there to be a little bit of highlight here, and then for it to go quickly into this jagged shape down here. That is the ground. And then come back this way. Finish that off. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot. And it's, again, very stylized, very simplified, but getting the point across for what this is. And the thing I love about this is that it still takes time. You still have to think about what you're trying to draw, what you're trying to do, and make it really work. Now, a lot of this is going to come together as to whether or not Sam is going to work in this. So I have to really try and figure this out. I'm going to put a little bit of detail here for the back of this leg. And the other reason I keep this as vector is because in the event, after I send my final deliverable files to Ben, and he's working with them, if there's anything he needs to be able to take out or work with, it's far easier for him to be able to pull that out of a vector and delete the path or the vector shape specifically so that it works better for his Glowforge, which has a pretty high resolution of burning from what I've seen on the works that he's created for me, but it still is something that like iconography and sign design, a lot of stuff like that utilizes simplified graphic design and components where you can see something immediately and you can make out that this is a spider, that it's some sort of horrific looking spider. At least I hope so. And let's see here, we'll go in and like right here, I'm going to really accent this thing and the sort of pistol-like bottom here. And we'll do this. I wish I could say that I had a specific technique that I used on a lot of this stuff to come up with why things look like they do for me, or how I'm drawing this stuff out of my head. I've had people who've watched me at shows before ask, like, why are you not using reference? I just don't. Sometimes it's more fun for me. It's a little bit more relaxing. It's less stressful. And it allows me to really kind of get into the artwork a bit more. Okay, so here is where I'm going to just trace along this red line, kind of. Actually, not really even tracing. I'm just kind of free forming from there. Free forming from there. Can't even get that right. All right, so now this is where I'm getting down to that last bit where I'm going to be working on Sam. So let's save that. Turn this off. Okay. I'm thinking we're really pretty darn close. And this is pretty good. This one was a more complex one, so we're going at a little bit over an hour from the beginning drawing stages, which if you look back at this is the original drawing. And when you look at that, it's not night and day, but this is a much more friendly, happier, almost Muppet-like spider. And then you have this one. So now, using what I have here, I'm going to go in, and this is where things can get a little weird. So there's a part of me, and this is where I have to make some real hard decisions on this, because a part of me is thinking, well, what is the shape I'm trying to showcase here? What sort of contrast am I trying to make here? So because there's a glow going around him, of course, his arm, even with the light of Galadriel in there, is going to be a bit shadowed. And so we want to create that form, including the little vial here. We're going to knock that back into shadow, okay? And so, I'm okay with that shape. It's not terrible. And most of this at this point is me just finessing the hell out of these shapes and trying to create something that looks like it works. And I may end up going back and changing this bottle, but for right now, this seems to work. And, you know, some of it is I'm being detracted by my own drawing. So I know that with Sam, you know, there's going to be some details in here that I can probably mess with a little bit, you know, to get, like, one of the things I thought was like, okay, can I do a reverse shadow on here, and then his hair would be up like this, and then start to kind of let the blast come out this way. And the reason I'm doing that is to create a higher contrast profile here of his face. And then come back in and then start deciding, all right, well, how far am I pushing this? So I can start to come in here and then maybe start to follow the curliness on his head, and down here go into the eye socket a little bit, and then down here around the neck, across the body, and we'll come across here like this. And again, I'm basically just creating shapes on what I think I want it to look like so, right? And that kind of looks like a mess. And then I'm going to go in and darken it. So you got a little bit of a hint of the eye in there. You've got the basic body shape there. Now I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to add this pant leg down here. I can join it up into this area and bring it back. Again, this is all stuff that, like, because, you know, this comes from drawing as often as I possibly can. I love to reference things, and I love to do research. What I mean by research is by going through the Osprey Man-at-Arms books I have, fossil books. I'll take pictures of cloth laying down, and I just stare at it and I'll look at it. A lot of times I'll, you know, the tactile feel of being like in a fabric shop and moving things around, or laying something on my arm, or studying how people will wear clothing and what they look like in it, which is kind of an added bonus working at the museum, because we spend a lot of time looking at the security cameras and watching everyone out there on the lawns. But because of that, I end up storing a lot of this crazy ass information in my head as to what these things sort of look like and how folds work and that sort of thing. Is it 100% accurate? No, not even remotely. But does it get the idea across? And that's really what I'm kind of about, is like, can I make this look like what I need to look like, what it needs to look like, without too much difficulty? And the whole idea here is just to see if I can get basic shapes in there that will let people know what they're looking at. And so in this case, I'm also having to make it a bit more stylized, because I want certain elements to really pop out on this. Now, this is an interesting part here. So as you saw, like, I have this here where it's now in shadow and there's going to be glowing around this blade. So is the blade darkened and then it's lighting around it, or am I doing the blade, you know, semi lit up? So in this case, I may go ahead and do a small hilt shadow down here like this. And then what I'll do is just do a little arcing on the blade here, bring it down, go up the fuller being the center of the blade, where when you stab something, if I'm correct on this, it's been a while since I've messed with swords, it's a channel for blood to be able to run down the length of the blade. Not all swords have it, but I believe the vast majority of them do. Mainly broadswords, long swords, things like that. And I could be wrong on that. I've got many friends that are far more versed in that sort of thing. So we'll get down here, and because hobbits have hairy feet, we can have a little bit more fun with this. So maybe there's some hair on this, and the toes here, and come back here, get the ankle in there, go up, that. So there's a little bit extra there. And because I want it to really come off like it's brighter than hell right there, we're just going to do a little bit of detail on this. And that's basically what we've got going there. So let's get this to fit into the screen. Do that there. And then we'll move over my thing here. So we're pretty close. I'm really liking this so far. It's really coming pretty close. But I have to look at it and go, okay, what else can I add in there that will allow this to really come out and really look good? I can probably do some detail down around here to bring the form of Samwise out a little bit more, but otherwise it's getting really close. So I think I've just got a little bit more to mess with in here. Now, I don't have any extra detail in there, but what I can do is, since I know which way this is sort of glowing out from, I can decide, okay, well, maybe what I'm doing is the glow is coming out like this on his arm, and it's hitting here. So then we're getting the belt area, the beginning of this, and we've got maybe some rock area in here, and then the glow doing this, which, oh, I don't like that, which does help it out quite a bit. So now we've got a form and shape. There it is, leg. So then the last thing we'll want to do, let me go ahead and save this real quick before this. I can't tell you, over the years, like when Adobe was way more, well, it depends on who you ask. Some people think Adobe is really unstable. I digress. I really think it's very well made. I'll throw a few little bits of darkness in here. At this point now, I'm just kind of experimenting, and like with that one, did not like that. It just takes away from it. So now I'm going to actually turn this off and mess with this, because this, I think, is probably the cleanest and clearest way to mess with this sort of thing and have something really fun come out of this. Because again, this is going to be reduced down to a coaster, which is probably a 4" by 4" coaster, and we want the basic idea of what's happening going on in there. So there's a few things I can do here, like I can probably do some ground here, something like this, and then when I get to the leg, stop it abruptly, bring it down, and then run it here in front of the foot, and then, you know, this is just ground underneath here. It's just some details that are underfoot, and yeah, that actually worked out okay. And then on this side, we'll do the same thing. We'll carry the shape through a little bit, you know, because there is the shadow there, but what I'll do is bring it down here like this, back over, and at this point, like, I'm probably adding more than I need in there, but it's getting the idea across. At this point, we know what's happening and this sort of thing, and there's always other little details I could add in there, but there's a part of me that says, okay, you might as well stop at this point, because you've basically gotten every element and every detail in there. It's fairly dynamic. It works. There's, you know, all the elements in there without it going over the top and super detailed. And this is something that has been, like I've said, many years for me to try and get this done. There's probably a couple different ways I could have approached this. I actually thought about one where maybe Shelob would have been crawling down a cliff face onto them with Frodo in the middle. But I have to remember that a lot of the things that could be done way more vibrantly, way more dynamically in things like oils or cosplay photography, you know, any other medium that utilizes color or even motion, like in film. There's things you can do in there. This is something far more simplistic that's going to be used in a smaller detail utilization. So for me, it's like, how can I break down the most basic elements, and I know I keep using that word, but that's truly where this comes from, to give it some dynamism, and because this is really like breaking it down even into almost comic book inking, which I love doing, but I forget how much can actually be construed if the shape, the form, even line, which in this case, I really tried to stray away from line. I wanted form to really truly be where it was going to be absent. I wanted form in everything. So going back again, it started here. You guys saw from the beginning how I had the blue line underneath it, and then built upon that, and kind of had, you know, this was more for motion, and the line work down here you're seeing was more just the direction of the light, and where that would basically narrate how I was going to fill in the biomorphic shapes of the virtual inking with the pencil tool. And so then with this, that ends that there. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, guys. I'm going to go ahead and get this video up, and if you guys have any questions or anything else like that, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Reach out like a lot of you guys have been doing on Messenger and other places like that. Email is mario@mariomora.net. You can definitely check out my website. It's theartisanrogue.com. You've probably seen it flash up down here in the corner a couple times throughout the video. I really enjoy the feedback I've been getting on everything else like that. Thank you so much also, guys, for watching the hell out of my playthrough games of Limbo and the other ones I've done. And I'm hoping to make more videos like this. In fact, I've got, I think, 5 or 6 more bits of artwork I'm going to be doing for Ben, and a couple of other illustrations for some other stuff that are going to be coming up. I'm going to follow the same format. You guys will see me work through it from beginning to finish. I want to thank Ben Watkins especially for this, because I was so, like, he's been doing wonderful stuff when he goes live on Twitch now. He was doing YouTube. I think he's doing both, actually. Could be wrong on that. But I was finding it so much easier to watch him work and go through these things and be able to interact with people. I wasn't ready for the interaction part of it or really going live, but I was really enjoying the fact that I was seeing him basically start and finish things within 1 to 2 sessions. So I thought, you know what? I've done plenty of time lapses. You can tell it's almost midnight. I'm super tired. I shouldn't be, but I am. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot, see how far it goes. Worst comes to worst, I was going to plow through this, and if it didn't turn out right, I was going to say, see, now I have to start over again. But it worked out really good, and the idea I had thought about all these last couple days really came together. And it was, I will say this, I had a little weird bit of pencil sketching that I did that wasn't technically a thumbnail. I don't have it right here with me, and I can't throw it up on the screen, but I think it's in the truck. But it was just this little pencil squiggle that I kind of put down, trying to think how I was going to do this and what it was going to look like and what the scale would be. And that is what really triggered this whole layout and made it go pretty easily tonight. Okay, I've rambled on long enough. I'm going on well over an hour on this video. Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, I sincerely appreciate it so much, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and I will catch you in the next video.